Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Enhance International Group's 13th in a series of webinars on building evolving resilient enterprises. Thank you for taking the time to attend, especially in light of the continued coronavirus pandemic. We hope that you and your family are well and safe. My name is Jim DeVries, founder of Enhance International Group, a group of over 40 consultants, consulting companies, and SaaS providers dedicated to empowering our clients' workforces by focusing on their passionate areas of expertise. We hope that you will find the information useful for you and your teams. We welcome questions, and especially this fireside chat, we welcome open dialogue. Please enter it into the Q&A, and we'll be very glad to get to you. Just before we get started, just a little background on the webinars. We've done a number of webinars on risk appetite, supply chain risk and resiliency, agility. We've also worked on, had a webinar on cybersecurity, the growth portfolio. We've also had it on the digital ecosystem and how to empower your employees. So a lot of topics we're trying to cover here. Today we're going to focus on this supply chain risk resiliency perspective of COVID-19 recovery continuum, the W and 3 Rs that the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium has developed. It's some interesting facts. There's about 53% of the businesses believe their operational processes have mostly or completely recovered from COVID-19. That's amazing. Half the folks out there, as of early September, say that they've completely recovered. And only about a third of the folks are saying that the operational adjustments need to be made, which is pretty interesting. So today, again, this is a fireside chat. It's going to be interactive. We have our EIG team, as you see on the screen, and we will welcome folks to speak up. Greg's going to give us a brief introduction, and then we're going to move on to Q&As. So with that, the EIG team, Greg, why don't you kick us off with your introduction for yourself?
Yeah, sure. Am I coming in okay?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Great. Essentially, real quick, folks, I'm the founder of a company called the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. It's now grown to 28 companies worldwide, 1,500 supply chain risk professionals. I teach supply chain risk management at Lehigh University, and I teach ERM, Enterprise Risk Management, at Villanova University. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks, Greg. And Dr. Phil Samuel, please.
Hello, I'm Phil Samuel from Lean Methods Group. I'm a managing partner at the Lean Methods Group, which means I get to lead a lot of transformational efforts for clients. That comes in the form of operational excellence, innovation, design, strategy, and digital transformation.
Thanks, Phil. Layla?
Hi, my name is Layla Rao, and I'm the founder of the Agile consulting company that focuses on applying the principles of Agile to help organizational and behavioral change be sustainable and manageable.
Thanks, Layla. And Shri?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fireside Chat. This is Shri Charasia. I'm the CEO and partner for a transformational solution called Process Scope. It provides insight into your processes for better management and transformational activities. So we are worldwide, primarily operating in North America, but we have clients in India and the US. Thank you. Looking forward to this discussion.
Thanks, Shri. All right. So again, we're going to talk about what we call the W recovery in 3 Rs. And this is our chart. We'll get into this in a few minutes. And we'll talk about the Bullwhip Effect, And with that, I'll turn it over to Greg to bring us through the topics of discussion today.
Okay, Jim, great. Welcome, everyone. Open mic, pretty interesting, should be a very exciting forum. Looking forward to the dialogue. We just want to touch on these topics today. As Jim mentioned, we'll go over what we call our COVID-19 W recovery and something called the 3 R's, respond, recover, and renew. We're going to share some latest statistics on the recovery and try to give you some data points throughout a timeline during the pandemic. We'll talk about the impact of the Bullwhip Effect. We'll discuss a bit on why and how work is changing. And we want to finish up with talking about building a 90-day supply chain risk management action plan. So we'll pose a few salient data slides for you and hope that those slides foster internal discussion within the panel and also external discussion with you, the audience. That's our game plan.
All right. So, Greg.
We start with the infamous John Hopkins updated picture of the COVID landscape. You all have probably seen this, but just for your edification, on the top left are the number of global cases. On the right side are the number of essential, sadly enough, deaths from COVID. On the far right are recovery numbers as well by city, state, and by country. And then we have the infamous COVID heat map in the middle. So this is our landscape as of basically today. So we just wanted to start there and then move through our data, our salient data points. All right. First and foremost, we thought we'd broach the idea of talking about some of the immediate COVID-19 impacts across different industry sectors. This slide comes from Friends of the Consortium, a company called the Conference Board. They share a lot of information with us, and we do the same. Thought it was very interesting in and around April when they did a survey across multiple industries, and boom, on the top, 60% of the job losses immediately from the lockdowns were basically in one industry, and that's food and drink at the very top. You can kind of take a look at the different industry sectors going down to the bottom, where it basically changes complexion in terms of who was hiring as opposed to who was laying off. So again, in any catastrophic event, there are winners and losers. This kind of is an indication of that profile. And on the bottom, we saw areas like air transportation growing early, supercenters and warehouse clubs growing early, warehousing and storage, basically the people who move goods, that whole industry sector early on in and around April, essentially were just hiring people as fast as they could. All right, so I wanted to share that with you, and perhaps we'll take a pause and have some internal and external comments or questions.
Just go ahead and raise your hand or put a question in the chat group at any time, and we'll get to you. Anyone want to speak up?
So, Greg, the graph on the right side, see the recovery continuum, the bullwhip effect. It shows the initial demand went up, and then the bullwhip effect happened. Is it same way for the companies where the opposite happened, where the demand went down significantly? Is it just a reverse of that graph?
It is, Phil. It's a good point. We'll add some color and some context on the bullwhip. The bullwhip recovery continuum just happens to be on almost every slide we and EIG have been presenting. But you're absolutely right. The over demand and under supply was the sectors associated with public health care and people who produce PPE equipment, the personal health equipment. There was a super over demand and an undersupply. Anyone else outside, as you can see on the left of the industries on the left, anyone else, all other industries, basically with the lockdown, were wrestling with under demand and an oversupply of inventory. So boom, right away you see a total imbalance across industry sectors, and that's what the initial bullwhip effect looks like in the lockdown phase, in what we call the respond phase on the right hand. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Uh-huh.
The other question related to that, I mean, we hear about the W recovery, V recovery, U, and the dreaded L. Do you have a view on that shape, or does it matter?
Oh no, we've and we have slides to talk to that. We in April called out and put together a W effect recovery, and that's our story, and we're sticking to it. And we have some very salient and recent slides to share with you in terms of not just the consortium calling it the W recovery, but many other external organizations like McKinsey and Conference Board and others. So yeah, we'll get to that. But
I think there's a lot. Maybe
we made a call.
Yeah, it may be good to cover a couple more slides and then open it up for questions again.
Yep. No, good question.
More contact.
Yeah, we'll provide some more context in a couple of minutes. All right. Good to go?
Yeah.
All right, another slide, and I mentioned to you, our recovery continuum is up on the top left of almost every slide. But I thought this was interesting. We wanted to share this, these salient data points as well for the audience. And this comes from a COVID-19 global survey back in April, the end of April, from another friend of the consortium. That group on the bottom right is called the Institute of Risk Management. They are a pure risk organization with designations, certifications, and they're based in the UK. We took their survey and have been sharing the data points that they found, and I wanted to share them with the audience. They asked initially in April across multiple industries, something like 1,900 different respondents. What were your top 10 immediate impacts of COVID-19? Color-coded, red is major impact, blue is significant. We'll just walk down. First and foremost, rapid changes in objectives and work, of course. Delays in projects, sure, understandable. Delays in hiring talent, okay. Distraction from your classic key objectives, understandable. Big one, loss of sales, revenue, and orders, almost immediate. Positive reputational opportunity, that may not be so straight away for the audience. In every catastrophic risk event, folks, you have two sides of the coin. You have one company's or industry's risk event can be another company's or industry's risk opportunity. Risk is a double-edged sword or a two-sided coin. That's what they mean by positive reputational opportunity. Problems with suppliers, sure. Couple more, staff absences due to sickness. Second last one, contractor issues. And the last one, number 10, is cybersecurity. So we thought that was pretty interesting in that order of magnitude, coming right out of the blocks in the lockdown phase. Thought it was pretty interesting. We wanted to share that with the audience. Next slide. This is more of a global COVID recovery timeline. Now, we don't profess that we know exactly when everything will go back to normal. We would never say that. It's just too fluid. But we thought this was interesting, and this was as of May 1st of this year, where the conference board, again, did a global survey, and they're pretty good at that, and they basically did a survey on consumer confidence around the globe. And they color-coded the globe, and we just wanted to give you a sense of timeline as they saw it from their respondents. The yellow basically said, oh, these countries will probably rebound fairly quickly. This is from May. The orange, they'll recover, but a little slower. And then the red, or the mauve, these countries would probably remain depressed for a sustained period of time. Again, in projecting, forecast is always wrong. It's the error that kills you. But this was at least an attempt to give folks a global picture of potentially a recovery timeline.
And if I could add, Greg, I just looked at some recent reports in July, August timeframe, a recent update, not in this form, but it was pretty close to this from, and I think that came out of McKinsey, had almost identical as to what this is as of July. As of September, I'm not sure where we're at, but it's just still held to be fairly true.
Yeah, it would. Again, we don't know if the conference board will ever do another update in this form, but they shared it with us, and we thought we would at least give everyone a sense of what the timeline looked like from a consumer confidence level back in early May at the outset of the pandemic.
Any comments or questions from the team on this topic?
I wish they were all yellow, but I don't think that's the case.
So do you have any, how many data points? I think probably significant data points from the survey data, right, to see these numbers?
No, Shri, I wish I did, but all they tell us normally is they share with us the number of either companies and or total respondents.
Okay, no worries.
And I think in this one, it was like 400 companies, and I think the number was 1,900 respondents globally.
That's pretty good.
So Greg, I do have a question about this. Because this color coding, which is very impactful, is based on consumer confidence reports, is there any kind of cause and effect thing happening here? Like not believing in something makes it worse, or any pattern like that?
I'm not sure, Layla. Again, they only share bits and pieces with us, and so we don't know if they dug deeper into it and started to put out cause and effect, or if this then this, or cascading, statistics. We are not aware of any. So I wish I had an answer for you there, but we just don't.
No worries. This is a very interesting starting point, at least.
Yeah,
I think these are snapshots is the way to look at all these reports that you see. You see them in the newspaper, you see them in magazines. They're snapshots, they're takes on things, and we can only look at them as things to take into account to link causation to these types of reports. Could get you in a little bit of trouble, because that would be very difficult to do today with the data that's collected, plus because it's sentiment, people's sentiment. And then the other issue is the statistical significance, as Shri mentioned. Are you really getting a apt sample size?
Oh yeah.
So you can argue for and against these reports. These are really meant to create conversations of where we're at and what should we be doing, and how does this make you feel, and what can you do yourself to make decisions.
Right. What kind of decisions? In fact, that's why that's why I think it'll become readily apparent. We've taken a chronological approach for this fireside chat. So as we move forward, you all will see more and more recent data, and hopefully that'll foster some dialogue as well. So just so you know, we've taken a chronological approach from the outset of the COVID pandemic to almost as of yesterday. So stay tuned on that, all right? Okay, we good?
Good.
All right. And to Phil's point, here is what we rendered, we, EIG, and the Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. We rendered this, and Jim, was it, I can't remember, was it around the end of April, May?
It was April
Yeah.
when we came up with this.
And again, the consortium and EIG have been working on this, and we've been presenting these data points for, I don't know, 15 weeks now. We rendered an opinion based on all the information we were receiving. Remember, we have 28 companies that are worldwide. We have at least the same amount or more partners and insurance folks and guys like the consortium and IRS. We have a lot of channel feeds into the consortium every day. So we rendered an opinion back in early May and put this together. And I'll go through and give you some context on the chart because Phil had a host of great questions early on. On the top are the government imposed restrictions. You'll see lockdown and then open, reopen, close, first normal, second normal, nth normal. We're not sure. But those on the top line are the government restrictions. On the y-axis, as Phil mentioned, we thought we would put together supply and demand profiles. And so the top of the y-axis is over demand, under supply. That's exactly what happened to all the healthcare manufacturers. Tremendous, 1,000% increases in demand in one day. So that entire industry had an over demand and under supply disruption. In the middle, the green, are the classic supply chain management, supply and demand balance, all right? And then on the bottom of the y-axis is everyone else. All those other industries at lockdown experienced under demand for their products and an oversupply. So that's the y-axis. Then we moved, you'll see the squiggle, we'll call it, kind of the W-looking line, but we attempted to superimpose through the timeline to essentially say, if this timeline comes to fruition, and there's no particular days, weeks, and months, but chances are that folks in supply chain, which is a profession, will probably experience this type of supply and demand shock, if you will, because this pandemic has provided two shocks, a demand shock and a supply shock, which is somewhat, irregular. And we said, chances are manufacturing supply chain folks are going to see this kind of process going on between demand and supply. And within those sectors, within respond, recover, and renew, however long they are, you will probably see things happening to your business like reduce your portfolio. That means reduce your stock keeping units. That means in the respond phase, people are probably going to pick the high margin that support the key prime customers, and they're going to focus on those. That leads to rescaling the supply chain. You'll see that. In the recovery phase, some companies may reduce their portfolio and just stop making low margin products. They might reinvent their portfolio. That's innovation that we always talk about. new channels, all right, like the 3M and the Fords who made cars and changed their entire supply chain to produce PPE equipment. That's a new channel, and that's reinventing your supply chain, and then on and on and on. So wanted to give you some context and hopefully give a little more insight to you, Phil, about your question. I'd be more than willing to answer any other questions that folks have with the chart.
So I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going back to kind of piggybacking on Phil's in slide number 1, where you had this bullwhip graph. Any impact, Greg, on the adoption of technology, right? Of the work from home capabilities, also in the supply chain area, the ability to order stuff online. Amazon, for example, has gone through the roof in terms of business. So the use cases that you showed in graph 1, any input as to technology influencing those areas or adoption of technologies?
Yeah. Oh, sure. I would say absolutely, positively. That falls right into rescaling and reinventing your portfolio and experiencing brand new channels. You know,
Yep.
where was Zoom? Where was Slack? Where was Ring Central? Where were these types of tools before COVID? They were marching smartly forward, trying to get incremental, new sales, and all of a sudden, boom.
Yep.
All right. And what you'll see, to give another thread on that question, is you will see, if we get to one of the slides, IRM asked this vast number of respondents, what were the factors that helped you recover the most? And they have a top 10. I will tell you right now, the number one answer that was impactful, that helped companies recover, was state-of-the-art technology.
Wow.
Number one from the respondents. We had that slide somewhere, but that I wanted to share that with you. That was pretty compelling.
It's interesting, right? I mean, if you think about it, it's not government policies, it's not isolation and decisions to do or not do, right? Wear mask or not, right? So recovery, when from a financial or economic standpoint, it becomes adoption of technology. Is that something?
It's what is it? What's the mantra? I'm drawing a blank about the crisis is the mother of invention.
Yes.
Mother of opportunity, but yes.
Yeah. It's I mean, all of the above. And that to me is new channels, reinventing your portfolio, and rescaling your supply chain, and many folks. And we have several use cases with brand name companies in terms of what they experienced and where they were going. So we have a few of those for the audience too, as we move down the chronological order.
Just to interject here, we have Alex Massetti, who is from the conference board, on the call, and he has some updates on sentiment, consumer sentiment. Alex, if you could unmute and share with us what you have.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm a contractor with the conference board, leading a couple of their councils, and I think it's all public information, but recent, hot off the press, was the Consumer Confidence Index rebounded strongly in September. I think to many people's surprise how strong it was, to the highest point since the start of the pandemic. And the number is the percent of consumers expecting conditions to improve over the next 6 months rose from 29.8 up to 37.1. So, still below 50%, but now at that level, their comment associated with that was that it might keep spending from slowing further and might bode well for the holidays, was their take on that latest reading of consumer confidence.
Thanks, Alex.
Terrific.
A question. This is Bob Forshey. I got a quick question.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering about the effect, and I don't know if I see it in the data you've got here, and I'm wondering if it's maybe sort of a second wave effect, and maybe it contributes to the L a little bit more than some of these other businesses would be more like the W. But the air travel and the water travel, the whole secondary industries that support those, it seems like they didn't immediately suffer a lot of loss in terms of jobs, but they're probably about to. And of course, the furloughs have been kind of deferred for a period of time, but I wonder if that's showing up in this data, or what's your thoughts on that?
You're probably right. There are industries that are probably going to experience a second wave if there's especially if there's no third bill coming out of the Congress, in terms of helping folks out. It's difficult to project, which we didn't here. It's difficult to project, Bob, by industry, but you're absolutely right. Some essentially probably went through the restaurants went through an L-shaped deal right away. Boom, you're off the grid. Others who are like Ford, GM, 3M, who reinvented their supply chain. Some of the other folks that we're going to share with you, like Unilever, Coca-Cola, food and beverage manufacturers, were going full tilt through the recovery. So totally uneven. Two things that we've witnessed so far in these 6 months. Two drivers. One, no industry is immune, which is unusual in a catastrophic event because it's global. And basically, the second one is there are winners and losers in every catastrophic event. But it's just very difficult to pin down by industry. You really have to go digging. And that's really not what our graph is indicating. It's more of a supply. When will supply and demand get back to a normal balance with a small amplitude? That's what we were projecting.
Yeah, and everybody's new normal is going to be different than where they started, most likely.
Mhm.
The likelihood you'll go back to your new, it's finding out what your new normal is half the battle.
Hopefully
That's a
we
good
provided some context for you.
Hey, Greg, you're the expert in this area. So is there a model? Is there a way to look at, hey, here's the threshold. If I go below that, I can never come out of the escape velocity, right? I cannot come out of it. So it's going to be the death nail, if you will, right?
It's a good question. I'm not aware of any, Sri. I really am not. I mean, the guys and gals in the governments who run sophisticated econometric models, it's all over the board.
Yeah.
There's just in our business what we call the unknown. There's too many independent X variables going on, and even our government, I suspect the folks who are running the big econometric models are pulling their hair out on occasion. It's tough for modelers at the moment because there's just so many independent X variables going on every day and changing every day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I don't have a pithy answer for you.
I hear you.
So Greg, I do have a different question. Jim, if you can go back to the previous slide.
Yeah, sure.
Is
Go ahead.
there any correlation between supply, demand, and jobs, and the kind of jobs and people in general?
I think there is, Layla. Again, tough to really pin it down, but some industries may not recover for a good long time, if ever. And then you can dig into an industry like food and beverage, restaurant industry and so forth, to say, will they ever recover back to where they were? We don't know, because think of it, and we're all continuous improvement, process improvement folks here as well. as you move through this squiggle, as you move through the 3 Rs, you potentially are going to reinvent your portfolio and have new channels, and you may or may not need the kind of skills that you had before COVID. That's my best answer to your question.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Should we move on? This is great conversation. There's just so we can go on forever just on this one slide, but there's some additional slides we wanted to share with everybody.
Okay, keep going. We talk about the bullwhip effect. We in supply chain, as supply chain professionals, we learn about the bullwhip. It's been around for 35 years. It's nothing new. The new part is that there are demand and supply shocks. So the definition for everyone on the call, the bullwhip effect is the uncertainty caused from distorted information or a lack of information flowing upstream to your suppliers and downstream to your supply chain. All right, so the bullwhip effect has been in the supply chain business for 35 years. It just has been magnified because of the double shock of the lockdowns and the restrictions. And just for a little more clarity, on the top left, you can have shocks in demand. And what happens on the left side of that graph, there's your customer, and as you move down, up the supply chain to your manufacturer and supplier, a small change in amplitude of demand at a customer can develop and manifest itself into a huge amplitude and bullwhip effect by the time it gets to tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. Over on the top right, we have the supply side of the bullwhip effect. And same approach, but a different view. On the left-hand side of the graph could be a foundry, someone who's making raw material or original parts. If they have a particular issue in their supply chain, a small little distortion can manifest itself rather quickly into a very large disruption at sub-assemblers, OEM, original equipment manufacturers, and the customer. So you can have the bullwhip effect from 2 starting points. And thus, when you add those 2 together, with all the restrictions around the globe and what we call the fits and the starts, you get the bullwhip effect across all supply chains. And whether it's a retailer, wholesaler, distributor, manufacturer, you could put in, customers and their customers and so forth. This is what we envision the W recovery looking like. And it could be, I'll try to answer questions. It could be elongated for some industries. It could be shorter in others. We just don't have that many data points, but we made a call early in May and said, chances are this is what it's going to look like going forward in the next 9 to 12 months. Any comments on the infamous bullwhip, which many industries are experiencing right now?
So what's the explanation for retailer stabilizing quicker than some of the others?
Well, I think it's potentially there in this graph, the retailer is pretty much the consumer, the customer. And so if you look at it from, let's say, retail apparel, like a Zara and so forth, I think this profile we used was more of a retailer approach from manufacturer through the retailer for illustration. That's all. Just, it's more or less an illustration that we put together. I won't say it's right or wrong, Phil, but It's essentially we tried to get a picture or draw a picture of the W effect.
I'm just wondering, Greg, if you look at the right side on the supply, it goes through foundry to components to, if there are multiple players in between, I wonder the bullwhip effect gets amplified.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Phil, you get into the law of large numbers. The higher number of nodes, we call them nodes in supply chain, the higher number of nodes and relationships in a supply chain just expands the probability of a risk event in normal times, let alone in abnormal situations. So,
in simple terms, it's your handoffs, right? The nodes.
Yep.
And more handoffs, more complexity, the more misunderstanding.
And the higher probability of a risk event.
So that's why we emphasize transparency and visibility to help us with that.
So is there a play for digitization there, since you bring up the transparency and visibility, by adopting digital approaches, could the bullwhip effect be improved? Jim, maybe that's go ahead, both of you.
No,
go ahead, Greg.
Perfect question. And that gets into that number one answer from the COVID-19 survey, and that is, what helped you? What factors helped you recover faster and move through the 3 R's? And the number one answer, Phil, was modern technology or state-of-the-art technology. And yes, I would make a statement from what we've seen, and we're big digitization of the supply chain advocates. If you can do that, the companies that are, and will do it well, probably will fare better than their nearest competitor, Phil. You bet.
Yep.
I would thoroughly agree with that. All right. Good. This one, we've actually walked through it. And just for the audience and the panelists as well, what we actually did is we took the original profile on the top, and then we attempted to provide some insight, one, to our clients, two, to workshop folks like we're having here, workshop attendees, webinars. We attempted to provide some insight in terms of, if you're here, if you're in that lockdown phase, you might want to essentially do these elements, exercise these tactics. And we put 3 different tactics associated with what you might want to do in 3 different phases. And the first phase was respond. We talked about, of course, at the outset, you have to ensure the safety of your employees, get the CDC protocols. We said in a crisis, you can't over communicate. You got to communicate up and down your supply chain by the hour. You got to develop and or run crisis teams. Many exemplar companies that we deal with have crisis teams, like a FEMA team. And when a crisis occurs, they spring into action. You might want to connect with your key partners. You got to stay connected. You might want to prioritize your key and new products as you rescale and reduce and reinvent your portfolio. You got to prioritize your key materials. And you want to secure logistics, which we saw. Logistics, people who were moving material and still are across the globe, secure logistics and watch your cash, because initially at lockdown, cash is king. We call cash a red line issue. If you can't produce free cash, you don't have a business. So those were some immediate elements, action items to the respond phase. In the recover phase, we changed it a little bit. still ensure safety. Connect with your old and new customers. Possibly, and we hate to say this in supply chain, go on what we call allocation with premium customers. Allocation is kind of a negative word in supply chain because that says I don't have enough capacity and I have to pick and choose what customers I will be able to service. That's what allocation is. Maybe strive for new balance of supply and demand because it's not going to be easy. And we basically said to our clients, drive decisions based on what's your risk reward and what's the cost benefit. You're going to have to do that again to reinvent your portfolio, serve your new channels, and potentially even reduce your portfolio. And again, now we're talking, our clients are mainly manufacturing companies. So that's what we rendered in recovery. And in renew, this is longer period out there. As you survive, what should you do to thrive in the nth new normal? Improve your visibility, map your supply chain, identify your risks, quantify those risks, digitize your supply chain. This gets into your discussion, Phil. We're big advocates of digitizing the supply chain so you can run what-if scenarios and see how your supply chain reacts to certain risk stimuli. Build response plans to mitigate those risks, and then maybe even subscribe to global risk alert solutions. Many people don't know there are many risk alert solutions out there who scan the globe every 30 minutes and capture risk events so menial, like a water main break in Hoboken, New Jersey, versus some type of earthquake in California or elsewhere. So they capture all these risks, and then they can send those risks to clients, and you can look at those risks geographically to make sure that you understand there's a risk potentially to a certain facility that you own. So very, very key in terms of good supply chain risk management. So that's what we did for our client base, and we've been attempting to share that with audiences like this since May of this year.
Nice.
Any comments or questions on this one? It's a busy slide, but there's a little more context than the first slide. So just wanted to share that with you.
Okay. So we skip to, we have about 10 minutes left.
Yep.
I'm just thinking we've covered a lot of these points.
Yeah, pretty much. We just wanted to give use cases. You want to ask a question?
Let's ask, go ahead. What are your greatest roadblocks to accelerate to your new normal for your company? From what you're seeing with your clients, and ask you to type in there. You can go to pollev.com, Greg Schlegel 910. The best is to open a separate window and browser window, either on your cell phone, which is easiest, or a computer browser.
Jim, can you just copy that link and put it in the chat window? Be easier for us to click.
Sure. I think I can. There we go. So if you can just click on that. Thanks, Phil. Good suggestion. You can start typing in there. What comes to your mind when you change management? Oh, that's a good one. The all culture one. How do you get people to change and recognize? Nobody likes to change, do they? But my wife has changed me over the years.
Sorry, Jim, this is Layla. You know I would argue that. I think most people are open to change. They just don't like being changed.
They don't like being changed. They can open to change. That's right. There you go. Say it in a positive manner. There you go. Nice, Layla. Thank you.
I like that, Layla.
Very, very thought-provoking.
Coaching perspective. There is no way I'm not going to react to that.
That's what I want to hear.
There you go.
Sure, you raised your hand?
No,
Okay.
I had raised it a long time and forgot to bring it down. My hand is hurting right now.
All right, so how are you guys doing at getting into the poll everywhere? There we go.
There's one.
Gathering trends, I'm guessing. What's the context of that? Who wrote that?
I wrote that. So, when we respond, there are short-term opportunities and long-term opportunities. So it relates to Shree's discussion on sensing the changes in the environment, or customer expectations changing. They are expecting things to be touchless. If it's a product, the thermometer should be not touching. If you're delivering, can I deliver it without touch? There is a bigger trend in terms of acceptance of digital solutions or digitization. Then there are trends in terms of collaboration challenges and greater acceptance of digitization. So, could you sense these things fast enough and then be able to respond quickly is a question that companies struggle.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting you bring that up. That's exactly what we espouse in supply chain risk and resiliency, and we're looking to build, and the exemplars do that. The IBMs actually do that. The Ciscos, the Flextronics, they build those systems, Toyota, to sense and respond and predict off of those sense and responds of a historical nature. Anything to add? Oh, we got some additional adoption. Any other comments?
So,
Was that Sri?
no, I was doing change management, and then also I added the culture can be helpful as well as it could be a roadblock. Like some cultures may have a more physical need to be in place, like adopting a new culture of work from home, or lack thereof could be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I would also add to that, Sri, in terms of, we talked about digitization earlier, that itself is a culture as well as a technology adaptation. A lot of this use of technology requires the culture to make the best use of technology.
Right. Absolutely.
Management. Okay, one thing we haven't talked about much is, what role do leaders play in this? How much impact do they really have?
Yeah.
So Greg, maybe topic for another webinar.
Absolutely. By the way, Greg just got booted off. I don't know if he's back on. He's coming back in right now.
How's that? Am I coming through?
You're coming through now.
All right, good. Yeah, I'll try to answer the thread from Layla. In this COVID-19 from IRM, the second biggest factor that helped folks recover was good communications and good leadership, high quality leadership. Third one out of 10 in terms of the polling. So it is a factor.
But Greg, I mean, that's really helpful to know. I would also be curious to see what it means by good communication and good management or leadership.
Yeah, again, I wish they would share everything with us, but they don't. So, but it's a salient stat nonetheless. It just reinforces your comment.
Terminally curious. So yes,
Yeah.
I want all the details.
All good.
Well, we're coming up on the hour,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we had a great discussion. I hope everybody enjoyed themselves. With that, I think we're just going to close it out. Greg, I think there was a couple slides here that you might want to just share this slide real quick before we...
Yeah, this was this is something exciting for us at both EIG and Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. The consortium is now part of a huge government grant to build out a supply chain risk and resilience proof of concept, actually replicating for the government what exemplar companies like IBM, Cisco, Nokia, Ericsson, Coca-Cola, basically replicating what they do today. So that's very exciting for us. And then the other exciting area, due to the COVID-19 and the W effect and all the aspects we talked about, the unknowns, the consortium's building out, we think, a first of a kind, cloud-based, hands-free, prescriptive 90-day supply chain risk management assessment and action plan. Kind of tactical, but it's got about 100 questions of discovery, and it's going to be using artificial intelligence and basically machine language to basically come up with who are you as an organization, what's your risk appetite in the top right there. Where are you on we have a 4-stage maturity model within this discipline. So who you are, where you are, and then we're going to essentially take a look at the outcome of the answers of the survey with like 3 to 5 different executives to get different perspectives, use some AI, ML, logic, and rules, and come up with a way forward for a company in a 90-day action plan to do what? To survive and thrive. So very exciting. We're going to give it a shot because none of us know when face-to-face dialogue, both internally at a business and with folks like us from an education consulting point of view, we don't know when that will come back. So it's pretty exciting for us, just so you know.
Thanks, Greg. So we're up at the hour, so I will just close us out. I hope you enjoyed the chat. We didn't, as much as we wanted to, we didn't get through everything, but I think we had pretty good dialogue. I hope you found it all beneficial. We certainly did. And just to let you know that we do have future webinar topics coming up, including resilient product ideation with Phil Samuel. We're looking at some artificial intelligence, ADIR process with fuse machines. And the first one will probably focus on OCR, optical character recognition, reading all that data that's out there and making it visible. How do we do that? We'll talk about adaptable agile strategies with Layla, and the list goes on. So those are some of the topics that we're looking to have webinars, and we'll have some more fireside chats. Thank you everyone for joining. All these webinars are posted on consultingeig.com. and please reach out and grab them. And if you would like the slides, please feel free to reach out at the website has a link to request for information. Greg, any closing comments?
No, I appreciate everyone attending. Good dialogue. We could talk. We could talk about this for hours. Hopefully, we'll do it again real soon. So, all the best to everyone.
Thank you.